listening to The Mark Cox Show. Follow the show on Facebook. Facebook.com/The Mark Cox Show.
3 cups of coffee, but I can't clear my head from what went down last night. I know we both have our own little ways.
If you're feeding a person a crap sandwich with a smile, it's still a crap sandwich.
Glad you're back with us. Before I get back to Chris, I just wanted to read this. So NBC News has put out a press release on Megyn Kelly now. Kelly is going to anchor a new daytime news program and a primetime magazine show. This is according to NBC News. Megyn Kelly. I mean, they wouldn't have described her this way prior to the contract, of course. One of America's most prominent news anchors will join NBC News. It was announced today by Andrew Lack, chairman of NBC Universal News Group. Kelly will become the anchor of a new 1-hour daytime program that she will develop closely with NBC News colleagues, so you know what to expect. The show will air Monday through Friday at a time to be announced, and as part of the agreement, she'll also get a Sunday evening news magazine show that I just have a feeling will not compete with 60 Minutes, and she will become an important contributor to NBC's breaking news coverage, as well as their political and special events coverage.
Do they say if her shows are going to be on NBC or MSNBC?
No, there's no MSNBC mention on here. Okay. No, she will not get pushed off to the redheaded stepchild. It's okay. I'm married to a redhead. People use that term all the time. She's not offended by it.
My girl Becky's redhead.
No, she will. She will not. She will not be pushed off to MSNBC. She will. Let's see. Today, and what they're bragging about here is that Meet the Press, Dateline, Today, and the NBC Nightly News are leading in the key 25 to 54 news demo, and the coveted 18 to 49 demo in the 2016-2017 season to date.
I still bet you a Happy Meal that she's going to be the host of Meet the Press.
You bet me a Happy Meal?
Yes, Happy Meal.
Now, I want
I'm cheap.
I was going to say, man, I don't want the Happy Meal. I want the Big Mac or something.
Happy Meal.
You're gonna have to make it. You're gonna take me to Hardee's because that guy's gonna be in the Trump administration. I'm gonna start eating over there instead.
We're getting a lot of commercials here.
That's good. Plus, we're streaming live on Chris's Facebook stream right now, so I got to watch what I say during the breaks. That's for sure. So let me get back to this voter fraud thing because we got a caller on the line who wants to talk about it as well.
Voter fraud?
So the Post-Dispatch did a great investigative piece, I thought, back when this 5th Ward election was done for a state representative seat with it was one of the Hubbards,
yes.
Held that seat, and a judge threw it out and said there was voter fraud, there was some risky dealings with the absentee ballots, and I thought the Post did a pretty good job investigating that, proving the problems with our absentee balloting system in the city, clearly, where people were mailed in for the form and then had people meet them back at their house to tell them how to fill it out, and then they offered to deliver it for them. I mean,
or some people had no idea that they even had filled out an absentee
No idea who they
ballot.
voted for. So the article today, if you haven't read it, what they've started to do is go through some of the people who are registered to vote in the 5th Ward and look at who they are. And they discovered that there's a guy who owns a bunch of convenience stores in the city, and particularly in Ward 5 there, I guess, and apparently who votes in Ward 5, but he actually lives in a $1 million mansion out west somewhere in the city of Wildwood, according to the Post. Mm-hmm. And the question was, why the hell are you voting in Ward 5 in the city, even though you got business interests there, when the law pretty clear? Yeah. I mean, you can find some vagaries in it, but basically it says you're supposed to vote where you live, not where you work 5 or 6 days a week. I mean, that's fine. That would be like me voting down here in the city, even though I live out west. I mean, it makes no sense.
Now, I'm wondering, is the Post-Dispatch going to do a follow-up story, maybe tomorrow or later this week, where it's showing financial contributions that this convenience store, gas station owner may have given
to the
Hubbards
I think it said in that article somewhere that there were political contributions made by that company to her campaign. Yeah. But still, what I mean, I guess the point is, what's one vote? Yeah. If you're a business owner and you have business in a ward, that whoever that representative is, or that state congressional representative is, state house representative, should be paying attention to you anyway. You shouldn't have to. They shouldn't care if they get one more vote out of you, right?
One more vote and one more political contribution.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess so. Maybe that's.
Mark,
but you were kind
follow the money.
But you were kind of critical of that story. Why?
Well, I was slightly critical because, as we were saying during the break, that the Post-Dispatch has a reputation among African Americans that they seem to be focused on the misdeeds of African American politicians more than they do sometimes of white politicians. One example was Charlie Dooley. Now, Charlie Dooley was no angel. There was a lot of stuff that was going on, but it did seem like they were kind of overly focusing on his stuff. And this can be construed as another example of that, is they've gotten on the Hubbard family and some of the shenanigans that were going on with those elections, and now every few weeks we're getting these exposés on the Hubbard family.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I'm sure
in terms of Dooley, and I always liked Dooley. He's one of those guys. He was Bill Clinton-esque.
Oh, very
because
likable.
if you met him in person, you couldn't help but to like him. Just a super guy, shake your hand, remembered your name, yell at you across a crowded room kind of thing. But as the scandals started to mount, I think that's when I saw the media pay a little more attention to things they had ignored since he took over the county. Right? I don't know. Just my 2 cents. Let me get to Rick, who's been holding here. Rick, you're on the air.
Thank you. Mark, I just wanted to bring up a point. I live in St. Louis County. I had a sister who also lived in St. Louis County, and this past voting season, let's just call it, I got letters, forwarded to my address from St. Louis County, voter registration. I got 2 letters and a card saying, please, please, please register, get registered. We notice that you're not on the rolls. Get registered to vote. Well, there's only one problem. My sister died 30 years ago.
Wow.
So letters to her were being forwarded to your house?
Yes, because we have the same last name.
Right.
So, yeah, they were being forwarded to my house, and my last name, I won't say it, but it does happen to carry actually a Spanish attitude. If people want to say Hispanic, go right ahead, but I'm not. I'm a Spaniard. But it does carry that. So on paper, I guess I look like a certain demographic. And I guess she did too.
And they were encouraging her to vote. That's interesting. From St. Louis County. I've always wondered why it's so difficult to clean up the voter rolls. They act like it's almost impossible, but it's not. You just need very clear rules on if you haven't voted in the past 2 elections, you're going to be let's just even say 2 years. Let's just even go 2 years, because there will be that way you've crossed municipal and state voting periods in a 24-month period, and if you haven't voted in that period of time, you need to come in and re-register. Why wouldn't you do that?
Don't you think also that they could cross-reference? I mean, it's not that difficult. I think a high school student could probably write the program. Cross-reference the death certificates to the parts of the city or county where this person lived. And, just basically draw a line through them. They're gone, so they're not going to vote. Unless they're in Chicago.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for pointing that out, Rick.
Thanks,
all right.
guys.
Take care, my friend. Thank you. Yeah, that's fascinating to me. I don't know if you could write a program like that or not, because you would need to match Social Security numbers to make sure it wasn't just a person with the same name. But there has to be a way to. Maybe it costs a few dollars to do that, and they've been hesitant to do it. But we need to clean this mess up.
Remember, I used to work at the St. Louis County Election Board, and people that died, the only way that we really knew to get them off the rolls is a relative sent in something saying, hey, this person is dead, take them off the rolls. But other than that, there is not the resources or the people to go through obituaries and see, is this person still alive? Let's remove them from the rolls.
And
totally
why not?
On the public.
And why not? And here's why I ask. When my father passed away a little over 5 years ago, the Social Security Administration, he passed away on the 5th of the month, so he'd already gotten his Social Security for that month. Mm-hmm. The next month, they demanded their money back, right? So a month later, the Social Security Administration knew my father had passed away, and they wanted their cash back that they had just sent him. Why wouldn't we set it up so that the whoever's in charge of voting, St. Louis County, St. Louis City, would also receive that notification if a person with a certain Social Security number passed away. Yeah, that seems so simple.
They should coordinate. You just gave me an idea that the election board should coordinate with the coroners,
the Social Security Administration,
or whoever that does death certificates for the city and all that stuff, and maybe have somebody go through that stuff and cross people out. But at this stage, it's basically they just depend on people to send something in saying this person's dead, take them off the rolls.
Well, then you've got a situation there, and back around election time, I had a lady came out to the Greitens rally they had out in St. Charles County, and we talked about it on the show a little bit. But she was getting a voter card in her daughter's name, who hadn't lived at her house in 15 years, and actually lived out of state. So her thought was she could have gone in and voted. They had the same name. She could have gone in and voted twice. She could have voted with her daughter's card, and she could have voted with her own card.
And it's basically all of this stuff is just the honor system.
It's the honor system.
If you move out of state, they expect you when you register somewhere else in another jurisdiction that you're going to, that jurisdiction sometimes will send something to the prior jurisdiction saying this person's registered here. Sometimes they don't, but it's an honor system thing where they expect you to let them know I don't live here anymore. I'm not registered.
We just need to be more vigilant about our form of government. I mean, we all signed, our forefathers signed us up for this thing, and it's the
not mine.
Greatest system in the world, except for all the others.
Not mine.
What are you talking about?
My forefather didn't sign up.
Dude, were you from China or something?
I think they were picking cotton.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. But you got the right to vote. You know what I'm saying?
Eventually,
so we got to change this. That's all I'm saying is we got to change this thing.
My forefathers were picking cotton.
We need to revise the system, and it's why I've enjoyed talking to Jay Ashcroft through this political season, because he's been intent on this whole voter ID law, and I think that's part of it. But I think they need to carry it a step further and reform these local election boards and how they require them to purge their voter rolls ever so often. I don't know why we wouldn't just make it a 2-year deal. If you haven't voted in 2 years, you're going to have to re-register, because it's your constitutional purpose to get out and vote. You need to do it as a citizen. It's your duty.
But I think there is that rule. But I don't know if it's uniformly enforced. I mean, we had things where people would come in and say, "Hey, I'm not registered," and they're like, "Well, have you voted recently?" "No, I haven't voted in 3 or 4 years." I was like, "Well, you've been
there. You go. You've been taken off. Don't get mad about it. Exactly.
Right.
Let me get to Carol real quick, who worked as a poll worker this year. Carol, what's your story?
My mother passed away 2 weeks before the election, and because of the voter fraud, I was adamant. I wanted to work the polls and see exactly what the whole what the process was, and to make sure, because I live in Jefferson County, and Hillsborough is typically Democrat. So when I went for voter training, I asked specifically. My mother hadn't passed away yet, but I asked specifically what happens if there's a death. And they told me that they check them every Monday. They purge those off. They check the obituaries and wherever the death certificates are issued from. So, and I had already sent in an absentee ballot for my mother, and that was another question. And they said those are not counted if there's a death. So when I got to the polls, since I had access to the registration file, that's the first thing I checked to see, because my mother passed away 2 weeks before the election. Sure enough, her name was still there, but she could not vote, and her absentee ballot was not counted.
Okay.
So I was confident that what I was told in the training in Hillsborough was actually true.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear. So they clearly, Carol, thank you, and Happy New Year to you.
You too.
Thank you for calling. It's good to hear that story. The other problem then we have is that it's not done uniformly, right? It's not. Some places appear to be doing it right, if that's how they're doing it in Hillsborough, and a lot of other places aren't.
St. Louis County has 1 million people when I worked there, so no telling how many voters. So that's a lot of stuff to go through every Monday checking the obituary.
I saw where Rick Stream is going to be taking over that position as one of the Republican directors. Maybe he can get in there and be a force for good. Let's hope.
And he is the epitome of integrity and honesty. So they've got the perfect person.
I was a little surprised the Greitens administration didn't tap him for something at the state level.
No, the election board.
This is a big deal. Don't get me wrong, but I kind of saw him as a budget director or something. I was a little
Election
surprised.
director is not a particularly difficult job, and you get paid a decent. You get paid a decent
You lobbying?
salary.
Chris Arps, thank you, man. I got to get to a break here.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Happy New Year to you. Thanks
Happy
for
New Year.
filling in last week. Look forward to seeing you again next week. Quick